Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our November 23rd, 2021 Best Practice webinar. We have a really great presentation today from the PEAR group. We're going to be talking about supporting learning and social, emotional, and mental health needs for youth today. So before I introduce our team, I do want to do a couple of housekeeping things. First and foremost, just always as kind of a best practice, it's nice to know who's on the call. Please drop into the chat your name and the site or school that you're with. And you know what, let's have a little fun this Thanksgiving week too. Why don't you tell me what your favorite Thanksgiving food is? And it could be the turkey, it could be pie, whatever, just whatever you're looking forward to eating on Thursday or whenever it is you're going to be celebrating. Let's go ahead and get that into the chat. I am recording this call. I know that some of you have a busy schedule this week and you may have to drop off a little bit early. That's fine. You can go back and reference the recording later. Also want to remind you that if at any time you have questions throughout the presentation, you can go ahead and unmute and ask those questions. Our presenters have assured me that they do not mind having questions in real time. If you are in a situation where that's not possible, and maybe you have some kids in your room or something like that, go ahead and drop those into the chat and I will gladly monitor that discussion then too. So with that being said, oh, Megan, I love the stuffing too. I just saw that pop up. So with that being said, I'm going to start by introducing Jeff Bueller, who is going to kind of kick off our presentation today. Jeff is with the PEAR team, and I'm going to let him introduce the rest of his team as well. So thank you again, and looking forward to this presentation.
All right, thank you, Crystal, and thank you everybody for making time in one of the busiest weeks of the year to, commit to your professional development, commit to improving the conditions of, the social emotional development of your youth. So cheers to everybody, and happy Pie Week. I call it Pie Week because I have turkey almost all year, but there's only this time of year do I get certain pies. So that's why I'm excited. So anyway, hi, I'm Jeff Bueller. If you all look out your southern facing window, that's me waving down here, across the border in Missouri. I'm an after school professional. I ran a youth program for over 10 years. And then I joined the Missouri After School Network, many moons ago, and started a after school resource center for our state Department of Education. So we provided all the technical assistance and professional development to over 300 youth programs, 21st century programs, school age community grant programs, a variety of other after school programs. And in doing that and bringing resources to the after school community of Missouri, that's where I met the PEAR team of like 15 years ago. And it's been a beautiful relationship since then, as we've worked to meet the needs of our after school programs and after school professionals. Our relationship has grown. I've been a trainer and helped develop products. I've been on NSF grants with them because they also have a big STEM component. We're not even going to talk about today all the different things that PEAR does. But we're excited to share some of the information and resources with you today because, man, the situation is things are tough out there for kids. Things are tough out there for our youth in terms of having their mental health needs met and their social emotional needs met in the crazy world that we live in nowadays. It was tough before, it's tough now. We're going to talk about all those details. Slide, please. So I'm going to give a quick shout out to my co-presenters here, and then you're going to get to hear from them in a minute. Jane is the CEO of PEAR, and Flo is the Assistant Director of Partnerships. They're both going to talk about all the different things they do. I want to say, and after leaving the Missouri After School Network, the past 6 years, I've worked on a U.S. Department of Ed contract to work with all the different state education agencies. And that's where I've had the pleasure of working with Vic. And I saw you on here, Vic. So I want to give a big shout out to Vic and all the love and support that I know he gives you programs. I've been working with him for 6 years. I've seen him on the national stage talking about all the amazing things that Iowa after-school programs are doing. We know that you've laid some groundwork for social emotional development, and we're going to build on that today. So I just want to give much love to Vic and all the things he does for the after-school programs out there. All right, slide please. So PEAR is, stands for Partners in Education and Resilience. They do a lot of different things, working with schools, school districts, out of school time programs to increase the social emotional skills and resilience of youth. We do this to help after school professionals, to help school administrators, to help teachers better meet the social emotional needs so that then they can be more successful both academically and, as we follow youth development principles, setting youth up for a life of success. Slide, please. So success in what, right? Social emotional, we know social emotional learning, social emotional development's been talked about, especially over the last 5 years or so, a little bit. So, it started off, it used to be, okay, we want to work with youth to help develop those capacities or those skills so that they can manage emotions, develop positive supportive relationships and, engage with the world around them. So I think we always kind of knew that as professionals, and it was always kind of, I think, a warm, fuzzy thing that people thought, okay, we're going to do math and, all the other GEPRA things that you have to report to. And we'll also do social emotional. Well, now we're realizing, and the pandemic really shined a light on that we need to meet the social, emotional, and mental health needs of youth so that we can support them academically, so that they have long-term healthy outcomes, both mentally, and resilience as a term. I'll use my loose definition here, is the ability to bounce back, right? Every child, every individual is going to interact with and experience hardships and different stressors in different ways. But our resilience, how we prepare youth to interact with the world and bounce back from all those hardships. So that's what we've been focusing on. Now, things were bad before the pandemic. Slide, please. This is just some statistics from what things used to like before the pandemic, in the sense of, 1 in every 6 youth, between 6 and 17, experience a mental health disorder every year. Now, mental health disorder is a significant disturbance. Again, this could look like a variety of things, right? A significant disturbance in either their cognitive skills, their emotional regulation, their behavior. It leads to greater distress in social situations, occupational situations, academic situations. So we knew that 1 in 6 youth were experiencing mental health disorders a year. In the onset, I think what most people don't realize is that it starts early. Almost over half of it starts before the age of 15, right? So this is where we're in this sweet spot where mental illnesses start to be formed, and we can start to do things about it. And I think the statistic here at the bottom, the idea that the delay between when someone experiences mental illness symptoms and when they receive treatment it averages over 10 years. Think of all the development, all the things that happen while an individual is struggling with their social emotional wellness, their mental health, right? All right, now that's all before the pandemic. So the next slide please. We'll talk about some of the statistics in terms of some of the most recent statistics, because just like it's been a test on our mental health as professionals, and I just from talking with Vic and all the other state education leaders, how after school programs have been meeting all the different needs of families and youth and schools and communities. Man, it must continue to be an incredible grind on you all. At the same time, it's affecting youth in new ways. Having over 13% of youth experience a major depressive episode. Now, major depressive episodes, I know for teenagers, aren't they always having major depressive episodes? but major, that would be an episode that is 2 weeks or longer. Personal experiences different symptoms related to major depression, sadness, hopelessness, fatigue, weight fluctuation, can affect their sleeping habits, their loss or interest in activities, and of course, the worst of all, thoughts of suicide. So major depressive episodes are becoming more frequent. The statistics, when youth do experience these major depressive episodes, it co-occurs with other things. It's not just like a standalone thing. Oh, they're depressed. Well, it also can lead to substance abuse, greater anxiety, and behavior issues. And again, the statistics, the majority of youth are not receiving any support, any treatment for their mental health struggles. Right? There's still over half of youth are not receiving any support. Now, I know this is all kind of sounds depressing, and I'm sorry about that. We wanted to kind of establish why this is all important. Again, beyond just the warm fuzziness of, social emotional skills in the traditional sense. But we have good news. Like that's the bad news. Here comes the good news. All right, slide please. The great news is you not only can make a difference, I bet you're already making a difference, right? The different things you do by having a quality after school program, just like we talked about, like the sweet spot between ages 6 and 17, by providing the supportive relationships, we can prevent or even reverse some of the damaging effects that come from toxic stress, major depressive episodes, right? You have the power to make a difference in the lives of kids. Slide, please. So again, I know you're already making a difference, right? And you're probably, I'm not a gambling man, but I bet that every one of you is already doing tier 1 support. If you're not familiar with multi-tiered support, system of support, we're just going to kind of give you a quick introduction. But in the sense that we know you all are working to build a developmentally supportive environment for all the students in your program. That's a standard, that's a quality standard. It's it's a challenge. We know you're continually working for it. But if you're a program that says, okay, we know we're giving supportive relationships, but how can we do more to support the social emotional development or the mental health of kids? Then we can kind of talk about the tier 2 and tier 3, where tier 2 is a kind of being proactive and intentionally not waiting for the signs of depression and mental distress and things, but trying to be proactive. When you identify some struggling students before it gets bad, giving them different support and having interventions, not in the sense that, the traditional interventions where everybody sits in a room, hey, we need to talk to you about this, but giving them support, say, okay, this student is in crisis, or a potential crisis. What can we do to identify those kids and help build a safety net and give them the different support? So we're giving you just a quick introduction here of the multi-tiered support, and then we'll come back and talk about all the different ways that PEAR can help you move from tier 1 to tier 2, tier 2 to 3 with the different resources they have. All right, next slide. And so PEAR is here now to talk about all the different ways that they can help you help your children and youth and families. I believe Jane.
Oh, that's me. Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. So I'm Jane Abel. Jeff introduced us earlier in the meeting for those who just joined. I'm the CEO of PEAR, which stands for Partnerships in Education and Resilience. Just a little quick background other than what Jeff already talked about. PEAR has been around. We're first of all located in Massachusetts, so different time zone, but we work across the country and actually in about 20 different countries across the world. Though we're in a different time zone and working with folks from California to the East Coast, we are seeing similar patterns of issues that are happening across our school and out of school time networks. We have been around for about 20 years. We started as a program that was connected to a research hospital in Massachusetts. And over the course of the last 20 years have developed a number of tools that help our partners. And when we say partners, we mean schools, school districts, out of school time programs, youth serving organizations, whoever is working directly with kids. We have developed a suite of tools and services to support the adults who are in the field of supporting kids. So we don't work directly with kids, though a lot of our work, particularly the survey piece, was developed working directly with students in Boston Public Schools about 10 years ago. So we have a sort of a suite of services and tools that we would like to talk to you about today, all of which are really designed to help you as out-of-school time providers, or if there are folks here from the school world, look at how these supports can be put in place in, inside a school building. And I think that's all I'm going to say right now, and then we'll go to the next slide. Just like one last thing to say about PEAR. And while we started, unfortunately, with, sort of the bad news, we do as an organization, and it is really one of our guiding principles to always look first at strengths. So all of the work that we do is strength-based. The surveys and any support that we give teachers around looking at data around kids, we do start with strengths. So that's our primary sort of guiding principle, that every student comes to the table with something good, something they feel good about, some strength that they want to let us know about. And we start from that lens as opposed to looking immediately for the problems. So it's really easy to do that, to start first with the problems. Another sort of guiding principle and a mantra that we always talk about at PEAR is knowing every child. And we feel that this is actually key to the work that particularly folks in out-of-school time programs can do, that if you know a student really well, you can then begin that relationship based on what that student is trying to tell you using his or her own voice. We also like to think that we can help organizations be more proactive rather than reactive. And what we find, particularly if we go into a school building or even in an out-of-school time program, that 80% of time is often spent on 20% of kids. And if you look at those, and that's sort of just, it might be flip for me to say that, but I think it's really based in reality that we often find schools struggling with a small percentage of kids, using a lot of resources to try to understand what to do with those kids. And they take away from, from other resources. So we try to create some proactive systems, and we use that by looking at data first. And then the last principle is we love data at PEAR. We came from a research background, but what we love about data is using it. So for us, having data that is easily accessible to our partners, that is understandable, that is able to be shared and to act on, is what that's what we're all about. And then I think we're going to go to the next slide. And last thing that I'm going to say, and then I am going to turn it over to Flo, is that all of our work has been developed on a youth development framework that's been about 20 years in the making. And this was developed by Dr. Gil Nome, who's the founder of PEAR. The work that he started with really was built around research on relationships. And then his work came over the course of the last 20 years, looking at a model that we feel incorporates the domains of thriving. So you can look at this image of a clover and think of it as 4 domains of thriving. And in those, I'm not going to read them off, but we bucket our work in these 4 domains. We believe that if a student has opportunities in these 4 broad domains, they will thrive. We also look at this as domains of thriving for adults. So if you look at your own life, if you incorporate all of these pieces in your day or in your week, you will also feel balanced, more balanced, and a little more settled and stabilized. So this is the model, the Clover model, is the basis of all of our work. And I think one of the strengths of the PEAR work is that we are grounded in one model. It doesn't have to be a model that you adopt as an organization, but just knowing that the connective thread through everything that we do is based in these 4 domains. And we'll give you some resources afterwards. Thank you, Jeff just put into the chat that you can look more deeply into this model, at some other point. So that's it. I think the next slide, and I think we're going to go over to Flo Dickerson. Flo, is this you or am I still talking here?
Yeah, I can take over.
Okay, thank you.
So as Jane mentioned, my name is Flo Dickerson. I'm the Assistant Director of Partnerships at PEAR. Prior to working with PEAR, I was an elementary school teacher. I taught 2nd grade and then also worked in after-school programming for quite a few years. So coming to you from kind of the direct service side of things. And I'm just going to talk through kind of some of those tools that we have developed that we thought could be particularly useful for folks in your network. And the first one is really around training and professional development. So throughout the pandemic, we developed a number of trainings really focusing in on the needs of young people in the current moment. And we have 2 of these series of trainings that we thought would be particularly relevant to your group. So this first one is a series of 3 trainings that are really focusing in on belonging. So that's one of those key dimensions that Jane was talking about. You all know how important youth feeling like they belong in your program is. And to that kind of piece that Jeff was talking about earlier, research has really shown how important a sense of belonging and positive relationships are for young people's mental health. So this is 3 different trainings. The first one is really thinking outside of the box a little bit in terms of, the pandemic has reshaped the way a lot of our programs work. And giving people participating an opportunity to do a little bit of that imagination. What could it look like? Maybe we don't have to do things the way we've always done. What could our program be like if we were really centering belonging? The second one there is really thinking about, okay, how do we do that? What are the structures we could put into place, the agreements we might be able to set, the rituals we might want to practice in our program that help build that belonging? And we'll give both some, concrete examples and lots of opportunities for people to share amongst each other. And then that third one, really thinking about how does identity play into relationships, our own identity as educators and that of our students. So this is our first series, all focused around belonging. All of our trainings are super interactive. We have lots of opportunities. One of the cool things, especially for a network like yours, is to be able to connect to other after school, out of school time professionals in other programs to get ideas from each other, to hear about, okay, what worked for you? Maybe I could try that out. So these trainings will have those opportunities, and there will also be some planning time. We always know that that is hard to find. And so we like to carve out some time in our trainings for people to do some action planning for themselves. So this is that first series. And then the second series that we thought would be relevant for you is this set of 3 trainings about mental health, and mental health in kind of the present moment, slowly exiting, hopefully, the pandemic, looking at kind of the impacts that we've seen over the past 2 years. So that first session in this series is just kind of that background information. Jeff gave us like a super quick snapshot into that. This training goes a little bit deeper, and again, provides those opportunities for people to talk to each other, think about what you're seeing in your programs, hear about kind of why might those things be happening. And then we move from there to thinking about, okay, how do we know where our students are? They've come back to our program this year. Maybe we're seeing certain behaviors or needs. How do we identify what those needs are? How do we figure out what we can do about it? And then that third one is really thinking about, okay, what do we do at each of those 3 tiers that Jeff talked about? What do we do for all of our students that help build an environment where they have their mental health needs met and supported? What do we do for students that might be showing those initial signs where they're struggling a little bit, that we can help support them before it becomes a crisis? And then what do we do for our students who maybe are showing up to us already really struggling, maybe in one of those major depressive episodes, or coming to us with really strong mental health needs of some other kind? And so we want to equip you with the tools to be able to understand where our students are based on kind of their signs that they show up to programming with. And then what do we do about it? So we want to be really concrete in, again, providing that kind of action planning time for you all to think about, all right, what systems do we already have to support our young people? What could we build on? What could we add or grow? So those are the 2 kind of series of trainings, and that works out to be 6 trainings altogether. And we're going to be offering these to your network in Iowa starting in January. So the thought was that we would offer these kind of throughout the spring to anybody from any of your programs who is interested in attending. And we'll provide kind of some follow-up information after today about how to sign up and register and that type of thing. But this was kind of our rough schedule. We'll spread them out, starting with those 3 belonging trainings in January and February, and then those mental health trainings in March and in April. So I'm going to pause there for a second and see if there's any questions folks are having about kind of the trainings, the professional development series.
Feel free to unmute yourself to ask those questions, or go ahead and drop those into the chat. And I'll just point out a couple of quick things while people are gathering thoughts. Vic has been kind enough to share some links connected to some research, as well as the Clover model, into the chat. So you might want to take a look at those. And I, of course, posted the reminder that we will be putting the slide deck, any supporting materials, and the recording on the website later for anybody who needs to access or just maybe jog their memory about something that was shared today. Does anybody have any questions?
If you're not thinking of any right in this moment, that is fine. You can feel free to ask us after. So I will go on kind of to the next key thing that we thought would be particularly useful for your programs, which are our curricula. So we know after school programs especially are often looking for more lesson plans, curriculum around social and emotional development. So this is kind of our second piece that we wanted to bring to you. We have 2 different types of curriculum that we thought could be particularly helpful. One is what we call an advisory curriculum. And what we mean by that is just, this is a time where young people are getting to connect to each other, to talk about things going on in their lives, to participate in fun activities. This is a curriculum that could be for up to a large group of students, a small group of students. Doesn't need to be students who are struggling in any particular way. This is at that kind of tier 1 support for all young people. So this has a variety of sessions. Everything is very clearly listed in the kind of manual that you would get, how we run the lessons, what are the components, what materials do you need. So it's really pretty grab and go for you to take. Your staff can look through it and say, okay, I want to do this. You can run the activities in order and do, 1 a week for however many weeks or every couple days, or your staff could kind of pick and pull activities that you think would be especially helpful for the students that you work with. So this curriculum is really, again, designed for any student group, and it has a real focus on that belonging piece. Next, we also offer what we call the Clover groups. So these are 4 different curricula that are centered around specific needs that students might have. So Ready, Set, Action is all about physical movement. It's getting kids up and moving around. And that is designed for your students who are super active and maybe can sometimes struggle with pausing, thinking before they act, with a little bit of that kind of emotion control. So this would be a great curriculum if you're like, okay, yeah, we want some physical activities, some games, some moving around, and we want to help youth build those kind of self-management skills. Photo Justice is a group that's really for our assertive students, those students that like to share their thoughts and opinions, to tell us what they're thinking. And we know that sometimes, while that is a great strength, it can be hard for them to then think about other people and to have that empathy muscle flexing. And so the way that Photo Justice works is that it helps those assertive young people kind of target their assertiveness into photography and using it to think about, okay, what's going on in my community? How can I support other people while still sharing my voice? Strong Links, we have multiple versions of. We have a boys version and a girls version, and those are for our belonging oriented kids, students who are really, maybe a little less likely to stand up for themselves or for others, to share their thoughts and opinions, and are really focused in on relationships and fitting in. So this is kind of more of a talk oriented small group, kids working together, and then they're building up their voice in that space. And then finally, this Our Stories is a curriculum for our reflective young people who are maybe sometimes caught up in their own head, doing a little bit of overthinking, maybe our more anxious students. And this is a creative writing curriculum that allows those students to kind of get some of those thoughts out of their head and onto the page. So 4 different curriculum oriented towards specific types of students that you might have in your program. And again, as with advisory, we give a very detailed manual that includes all of the handouts and materials and talking points, everything that your staff might need to be able to run the group. These also would have an orientation session led by one of our PEAR trainers that would help anybody who's going to facilitate the groups get up to speed. How do I do that? So lots there to consider. And again, I will pause, see if there are any questions folks are having about the curriculum.
So we do have in the chat a request to expand more upon the March topic in particular. I don't know if we maybe just did that, but if you could maybe add a little more context, I think that would be helpful.
That was the training happening in March. These ones.
I think so. Barb, since you're the one who put the question in, feel free to unmute and clarify.
I guess I was wondering, understanding the moment from a mental health perspective, that's a very interesting topic. I just wondered what your direction on that was. But I don't expect you to stop your presentation. I just wondered if you could give me a few sentences on what that is talking about.
Yeah, totally. So this is really thinking about what do we see as the needs students are showing up with. So we're thinking really focusing in on youth and how they might be appearing, how they might be showing up in your programming. based on the experiences of the pandemic of the past 2 years, and how that could have impacted their mental health. And then we start to get in a little bit to thinking about, okay, what is our role in being able to support them? So we know that, you all are not trained therapists, most likely, and neither are your staff, but what in our kind of capacity as youth workers can we do to support those young people and their mental health needs?
Okay, thank you. That answered the question. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions folks are having about the curriculum?
We have another question that just entered the chat. What kind of feedback have you received from your clients who are using or who have used your curricula?
Yeah, I think we've gotten really great feedback in terms of kind of two different things. I would say first and foremost, we've had a lot of really positive feedback on the level of our kids really enjoyed the activities. They were excited to come to group. They liked talking with each other, having those opportunities. And then I think on the second layer, we're definitely doing work kind of trying to gather more clear data around the specific skills that young people develop through the groups. There is actually a survey that students take at the end of their group where they're asked kind of how they feel they've changed on a variety of ways of behaving and approaches. And so we're getting data both from kind of the programs and the facilitators around, kids like showing up, it was fun, we were able to do these activities. And we're starting to get some data back from kids themselves around, where they felt like they grew and changed and developed. I think might be on the website, definitely on one of our brochures that we can share after this. We have some quotes too from some schools and programs that have used the groups.
Hey Flo, can I just butt in here?
Yeah, totally.
And just to acknowledge that the groups are the result of a lot of years of work that PEAR has done. We started about in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, some programs in the middle schools and Boston Public Schools where these groups evolved from. So these have been, this is curricula that has been refined and refined and refined with kids over the years, and which makes it, I think, a sort of a unique opportunity because we tend to be perfectionistic. We continue to refine every year as we work with kids and we get feedback. So these groups really evolve from one of our wonderful programs that we ran in Boston Public Schools, and now they're available to anyone who wants to use them. In the old days when we send out hard copies, it was beautifully presented. Now everything obviously is electronic. It still looks great, and it's still very, very user-friendly for facilitators. You don't have to be a counselor, you don't have to be an expert, because we have some support around how to facilitate these groups in a productive manner. So I'm very big on these groups because they have really been a work in progress for many years based on a lot of research. So sorry to butt in.
Oh, no, not at all. I was also answering a question in the chat around kind of the use of these in summer programs. And I would say definitely we don't have a separate curriculum for summer programs, but any of these could for sure be run over the summer. That advisory one, especially because of its focus on kind of building belonging and the fact that it's a little bit more kind of pick and pull, I think might be good for a summer program where you could say, okay, we don't have kids long enough to do 24 sessions, but we're going to find a few that we think are going to be best suited for this group. We're going to do it as a relationship building, community building time.
Great. Thanks for the questions, everyone. Keep them coming in the chat, or again, feel free to unmute and ask those in real time.
Awesome.
Flo and team, I think we're all caught up with the questions, but if I missed something, please don't hesitate to speak up, folks.
Oh, thanks. So just kind of to finish off, those were those professional development series, and the groups were the ones that we thought were kind of the most relevant to you all. But we do, as Jane was laying out earlier, offer some other tools. And so we wanted to just share a quick overview of what some of those are. So again, we had that 3-tier model that Jeff introduced us to. And we wanted to share kind of what are the PEAR tools at each level. So at that tier 1, that's that advisory curriculum that we talked about, those trainings around building belonging, definitely applicable for all students, as well as that holistic student assessment. So I'll talk about what that is in just a second. That's a survey that students can take that gives you real interesting, important information about their social and emotional development. At that tier 2 level, we're starting to think about kind of putting into practice what we learn in those mental health trainings, those Clover groups curriculum, definitely great for those students when you start to see that need arising. Hopefully, you can get them into the group or similar supports before it gets into that more of a crisis mode. And then we can, work with you if you did use the survey tool to kind of make sense and use your data to support those struggling students. And then at that tier 3 level, again, we're kind of making use of that mental health PD and specific coaching around your program's data to support those students that might be more in a crisis mode. So the one piece here that we haven't really talked about before was that holistic student assessment. So the holistic student assessment, the HSA, is a survey that students take themselves, and it gives us that kind of information about where they're at socially and emotionally. It measures 14 to 19 different scales, depending on which version of the survey you do, that get at kind of those general life resiliencies. So those are things like trust and empathy and perseverance. It gives us information about how they're doing academically, so learning and school engagement. That's scales like learning interest, academic motivation, school bonding, critical thinking. It gives us information about relationships, both with peers and adults, and then potentially some warning signs for some of those stronger kind of mental health needs. So that's, anxiety, depression signs, those warning signs, the warning signs around hyperactivity or inattention, that type of thing. So the HSA is super helpful in being able to give us a snapshot of which of our students are kind of in what level on that pyramid, how much extra support they might be needing, and to give us a sense of kind of what are their strengths and challenges. And you can see that data. This is just kind of an example of what that might look like in the aggregate. So this could be maybe your whole program. You can see, it looks like 30% of our kids are in that, tier 1 doing pretty well. 40% are in that, they have some extra needs that we might want to support. 31% are in that tier 3 where we're really starting to have more extreme need that we want to be able to support. So that would be for this kind of example program. And below we could see what were the strengths and challenges for our young people. So the top strength for this particular group was learning interest. 24% of them were really feeling positive, really great about kind of their general curiosity, interest in learning, and then followed by a bunch of these relationship related scales. It would also tell you about their challenges. So for this group of students, 34% of them were really struggling with perseverance. And that's something I think we've been seeing with a lot of young people that we work with since the pandemic, especially, that's been one of those areas that's been harder for them to work towards. Obviously, there are lots of kids that are in the middle that are just kind of within the norm. The HSA is a normed validated survey. So we compare kids to other young people in their same age range from across the country. So we have this aggregate data, and then you'd also get information about your students one by one. So for this particular, this is just one kid, we can see that they're really feeling strong about assertiveness. That's pretty high, but they're struggling in that emotion control. That's pretty low for this student. And so I can think about, all right, what are we doing to help allow them to be assertive, to use that strength? And what are those areas where we're helping them grow in those emotion control skills? So this provides all sorts of data that you could use at a number of different levels to plan program-wide supports around some of those common challenges or individual supports for students who might be struggling. So this is a lot of information. We definitely don't expect you to be making too much sense of the data for this kind of fake program right now. But just wanted to give you a heads up that that is a tool that we offer. A lot of the programs we work with have found it very useful in their planning process. And throughout, we do also offer coaching. So you wouldn't, if you did this survey, be left to your own devices to make sense of the data, figure out what you want to do with it. We have coaches that work specifically with our schools and programs to make sense of the data, to plan, to think about, okay, based on what your data is showing, how would we move forward to, determine what your particular goals are and work towards them. So that is something that we offer both around data and around groups. We also offer coaching for folks using our curriculum if they want a little extra support there. So that was a lot of information. Gonna pause again and see any questions you all might have about any of that, the trainings, the groups, the survey, or the coaching.
All right. Again, folks, feel free to drop those into the chat or unmute and come on and ask those questions. Okay.
One thing I will do, I'm gonna leave this up here. If you have questions that aren't answered today, I know we'll send Crystal some follow-up handouts to send out to you all to take a look at. But this is my email and Jane's email, as well as our website. If you have questions for us after today, feel free to reach out and we'd be happy to answer those.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Also, if you are not jotting this down quick enough, or you perhaps transpose a letter or two, I'm happy to be the connector for you as well to the PEAR team. So unless there are any other questions at this time, I'm just going to reiterate Vic's comment that he just dropped into the chat. And I want to say a very heartfelt thank you to the PEAR team. Great presentation today. I think a lot for people to think about. We will absolutely get this recording and the slide deck up onto the iowa21cclc.com website. Hoping that happens a little bit later this afternoon, but it might be tomorrow morning for those folks who are on the call. As always, do not hesitate to reach out to Vic or myself if you have any questions. Like I said, we're happy to be the connector for you to this group. And with that being said, I think I'll go ahead and wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and I will stop the recording.